Hello, welcome back. Yes, it's all about demonstration, explanation, demonstration, showing you a little bit about magic, spells, D&D 5e, all that sort of good stuff. So before you see a battle grid or battle mat with some miniatures and dice, and I'll be doing some demonstration today. I'm going to be putting up a poll as well for those of you who want to take part in that poll. It's completely up to you. You do not have to, but it is useful to me. And on top of that, I would suggest that you ask questions, okay? I'm going to certainly give you the opportunity to ask as many questions as you possibly can in the time that I have available to answer them. Just a big warning, though, with regard to questions. I cannot answer every single question. There are things that I will not know, okay? I'm going to do a slideshow first, be going over the basics of D&D first. You will be seeing my face and the battle mat during this, but I usually do a slideshow first. So my suggestion to you is grab some food, some drink, make sure you are comfortable, and then, we will get started. And then, of course, I will do the slideshow. Once the slideshow is finished, I think it's about 20 minutes, maybe a little bit less than that, might be a bit shorter. Okay, once I've done that, then I will be transitioning into answering your questions and doing some demonstration. That's the plan for today. Anyway, let's get started. Sorry, people, I'm trying to just get comfortable because this is probably the most complicated one out of all of them. Hi, welcome to How to RPG. My name is Fred Wheeler, and today I want to talk about tabletop role-playing games, D&D. This is Dungeons & Dragons 5e rules, lesson 4, magic mechanics, spells, all those good things. I'm sure you have many questions. So what is the overview that I'll be doing? Spell level, cantrips, rituals, how they work, spell casting times, spell components, spell duration, how does concentration with a spell work, schools of magic, spell area effects, and casting a spell. So there's a lot. So the objectives, I'm going to explain how to use magic and spells and the mechanics for Dungeons & Dragons 5e. I'm going to do some demonstration of magic and spells, and I'm going to let you participate by asking questions. So let's start at the very beginning. Absolute basics. Spells have a level. Now, spell level indicates the power of the magic being created or cast and how difficult it is to cast. So spells will range from level 0, which is a cantrip, right through from level 0, then 1, right through to 9 in terms of power level. So 0 is the least powerful and 9 is the most powerful spell. Character level does not respond or correspond in any way to spell level. Even when you're playing a caster, a spellcaster class, it doesn't correspond in any way to your spell level, and your character level are completely different things. Now, I did mention 0 level spells. 0 level spells are cantrips. Cantrips are things that you can cast an infinite number of times without using up a spell slot. And most spellcasters in Dungeons & Dragons 5e have a spell slot. You don't have to prepare a cantrip. If you know the cantrip, you can cast the cantrip as many times as you like. And why is this? It is because the spellcaster, their mind is so practiced, they've gone over that spell so many times that they can cast it as many times as they like because they never forget this spell. One of the things to remember is Dungeons & Dragons uses Vancian magic, where you have to learn a spell, and once you've used that spell, you lose that spell. Cantrips sort of break this in a slight way. There's another type of spell that you can cast, and that is a ritual spell. It has a ritual tag to it. If the spell does not have the ritual tag, you cannot cast it as a ritual. A ritual version of a spell will take 10 minutes longer to cast than normal. So if the spell would normally take an action to cast, then it's going to take 6 seconds plus 10 minutes longer than normal, which means essentially you're looking at most spells taking at least 10 minutes. A ritual, when you cast a ritual spell, does not expend or use up a spell slot. So there's a good reason why you want to have rituals available. The ritual version of a spell can't be cast at a higher level. So if you're going to use a spell that can be upcast, you will not be able to do that with a ritual. A spellcaster must have the feature that grants the ability to cast a spell as a ritual. Wizards have this. Okay, so if you're a wizard, you can use this. There is also, of course, a feat that allows you to do ritual casting. The caster must also have that spell prepared on their list of spells to be able to cast a ritual spell, unless, of course, you are a wizard, because that class stipulates that you do not need to have that spell prepared. As long as it's in your spell book, you can cast that spell as a ritual and take 10 minutes. So there's always a time factor to a spell. This is called the casting time. There are different types of casting times. They can vary. So casting time is how long a spell takes to create or form. Casting times can be broken up into 4 categories. The first one is your main action or action to cast it, and usually you'll do that in a battle or in combat. Then there's also a bonus action, which is not the same as an action. And then a reaction, which you would take on somebody else's turn normally. And then you can have longer casting times that can range from a few rounds right through to hours. Part of the process of casting a spell is having the necessary components. The components of a spell are broken up into 4 different categories. So the components of a spell can be physical, but they can also be something else. So when you're looking at your components, they'll be broken up into, and you'll see it designated in the spell description. As a spellcaster, you must meet the requirements, the order of casting that spell, the components required to do that. Not all spells have a spell component. Some do not have certain types of spell components. They may only require one of those components or even 2 rather than all 3. Okay, so what are they? Verbal component. This is the chanting and the mystical words to perform the spell by actually voicing it into the world. How much noise does this make? Talk to your game master. I know this is a question I get a lot. Then you have the somatic aspect of your component. This is when the spellcaster has to perform a gesture to manipulate the magic into existence with their fingertips or hands. And this requires at least one hand to be free to perform that spell. Now, if you're using a somatic gesture and there's also a material component, the same hand, the same free hand, can be used to hold the material and form the gesture at the same time. You do not need to have a separate hand for the material component. Which leads us into the last one, the material component of a particular spell. This is a particular object or substance. It's usually going to be stored in a component pouch, a spellcasting component pouch. If you have a spellcasting focus, you can substitute your spell component pouch for a spellcasting focus. That's fine. That could be a wand, an orb, a rod, a staff. And this will assist in binding the magic into the physical world. It requires at least one hand to be free to perform it, and as I said before, if it has a somatic and a material component, you can use the same hand to do both. Okay? Time is always a factor. Spells have a time frame. So the duration of a spell's duration is the length of time the spell effect persists and continues on. A spell duration can be a few rounds. It might be minutes, it could be an hour or hours, it could be days, it might even be years. There's also instantaneous spells, where the magical effect exists only for a fraction of a second. Concentration spells require a spellcaster to focus on the spell for the duration of the effect for that spell to remain in existence. This is where you cast the spell and you need to continue to focus on the spell, otherwise the magical effect will end. So you can't stop concentrating. So how does concentration work? Concentration is very specific. If a spell is a concentration spell, it will be marked with a C for concentration. Okay, it will state that it is. A spellcaster can only have one active concentration spell at a time. If they try to perform another concentration spell, they will end the first concentration spell that they performed or cast. A dungeon master can require a DC 10 Constitution saving throw to maintain the concentration of that spell if there are environmental phenomena that would distract the spellcaster. Now, this is often overlooked. It is generally an aspect of spellcasting that people don't take into consideration. Instead, it's usually the next thing that I talk about that people focus on. But there is some movement in the game for a dungeon master to require a DC 10 Constitution saving throw to maintain concentration on a spell that is a concentration spell if there is something like rocks falling or it's heavily snowing or something like that. They might decide that that's distracting you so much that you may have to actually make a concentration check, even if the next thing is not covered. Now, if a spellcaster takes damage while concentrating on a spell, the magic user must make a concentration saving throw. Okay, it's a Constitution saving throw. So Constitution is what we use for all concentration spells, and that will help maintain concentration. Otherwise, the spell will end. So every time you take damage, there's always a possibility of losing a concentration spell, and a Constitution saving throw will be required. And I know what you're thinking, well, that's all very well, but what the heck do I do in terms of rolling? What do I need to actually roll? What are the mechanics? It's very simple. The Constitution saving throw for a concentration spell has a DC of following. It's either equal to 10 or it's equal to half the damage you've taken. Whatever has attacked you or hit you or caused you injury, okay, or is going to reduce your hit points, whatever it is, it's going to be half that damage. Or it's 10, whichever is higher. So if 10 would be higher than the damage half the damage you would take, then you're going to be rolling a DC 10 for this. If the damage you would take would be greater than 10, then you'll take half the damage. So if you took 23 points of damage, you'll be rounding down, you'll be taking 22, it's going to be 11. So the DC is now 11. You take 11 points of damage, 11 is your DC rather than 10. Very simple. Dungeons and Dragons is made up of different schools of magic. So what are the different schools of magic? Magic is grouped into spells or categories. There are 8 categories with different functions from each school. So abjuration spells offer protection to the spellcaster or potentially to somebody else. Conjuration spells involve the transportation of an object or a creature. These might be things like teleportation. Divination spells reveal information. Things like detect magic and scry are certainly divination spells. Enchantment spells affect the mind of a creature, quite often to trick them, create things in their mind that they don't expect. Enchantment would be charm person. Evocation spells manipulate magical energy to destroy or restore something in some way. So firebolt, fireball, these are all potentially evocation spells. Illusion. Illusion spells deceive the senses of your creature that you're affecting. So they're essentially going to create illusions of magic. So maybe it's an illusionary building or a bush, something that's not actually there. Necromancy spells manipulate energy of life and death. So things like animating dead or curing wounds. This would be necromancy. Lastly, transmutation spells. They change the properties of a creature or creatures, objects, and the environment. You actually get to change how things are in the environment. So transmutation would be something like polymorph, if you want to transform another creature into, say, a beast or an animal of some kind. Spell area effect. Some spells don't just target one thing. Sometimes they target more than one thing. So the area effect of a spell is broken down into this. It is the area of the spell. It determines the space where the magical change or effect is going to take place. Whether that's on a creature or the environment, it doesn't matter. Whatever creatures or parts of the environment that are caught in that magical area are going to be affected. There are different types of areas of effect for a spell. You can have a line effect, where it's everything in a line is affected, and it might be quite wide, that line. That would be something like lightning bolt. It might be a cone shaped like an ice cream. And something like that would be, say, burning hands. You have a cube. So a cube is basically just a big, huge block. It's exactly what it sounds like. Okay? A three-dimensional square. Or a sphere. So like a ball shape. Now a sphere would be, a good representation of this would be fireball. Fireball is a sphere shape. And then you also have a cylinder, which I guess the easiest way to describe this is the toilet roll. The toilet roll cylinder in the center. The cardboard bit. That's a cylinder. Okay? So those are the different types of areas that you can have. Around that, casting a spell is broken up into 5 different types of spells. So the first one is the melee attack spell. They are made at close quarters with an attack roll targeting the enemy's armor class. Things like this might be booming blade or shocking grasp, inflict wounds, flame blade, spiritual weapon. They're all melee attack spells. Then you also have ranged attack spells. These spells are made at a short range or a long range with an attack roll targeting the enemy's armor class, just as the melee one does. This could be something like Eldritch Blast, Ray of Frost, Firebolt, possibly Guiding Bolt, and Chaos Bolt. Next we have the saving throws. You can have a melee saving throw spell. They're made at close quarters, right up in your face. You perform a saving throw targeting an enemy, and some examples, there's very few actually, a Bestow Curse. Bestow Curse is a melee saving throw spell. Okay. Next we have ranged saving throw spells. Ranged saving throw spells will target a creature or creatures, short range or long range, and you're going to have to force the enemy or target to make a saving throw of some kind. So examples of this would be Fireball or Lightning Bolt, Sacred Flame, Toll the Dead. Okay. And then lastly, we have automatic success spells. They do not require an attack roll by you. They do not require a saving throw. They just work. When you cast them, something happens. Now, examples of this would be Prestidigitation, which is basically the Swiss Army knife of D&D in terms of spells. Mage Hand, Light, Mending, Message. Magic Missile is an attack spell, but it does not require an attack roll or a saving throw. It just hits its target. As long as you meet the requirements, it's just going to work. And Druidcraft. These are all automatic spells. They're always successful. Now, every time I run this program, I like to give some miscellaneous recommendations, so I'm going to do so. Spellcasting is really complicated. It's complex, so it's all right to make mistakes. I know some people will say, but Dungeons & Dragons 5e is one of the simplest versions of Dungeons & Dragons. That is in fact not true. It is simply because they have probably not played any other version of D&D. I can assure you that basic D&D is simpler than Dungeons & Dragons 5e, but it also can be more complex. So in any case, no matter what system or version you're playing, spellcasting and magic is always going to be complicated because it changes the very fabric of the environment, the fantasy world, or the place that you're interacting with. It changes the reality of creatures. So magic is hard to adjudicate. Known spells, prepared spells, and spell slots are not the same thing. Okay? Known spells are the spells that you know. And from that group, you will prepare some of those spells. And then from the prepared spells, you'll be able to cast those spells a certain number of times using your spell slots. And each class works slightly different in terms of known spells, preparing spells, and spell slots. And I can't go over all of them here. So just be aware these things are different. The spell level that you cast is not equal to your class or character class level. This is something that a lot of people get confused by. I wish they had used different wording. They did not. So unfortunately, you've got to just live with it for now. Read the spells really carefully, and then jot down or write down the page number for quick reference, not just for yourself when you're playing the game, but also for your game master or dungeon master, so that things can be worked out quickly. When you're dealing with spellcasting, it is always a good idea to have a conversation with your game master so you understand how they adjudicate and rule a particular spell that you might want to use. If they're going to rule it in a particular way, then maybe that is not the spell that you select. One of the things you're going to find is if you're a player and you've never been a game master and you have to adjudicate magic, it is much more difficult than you can possibly realize. So what you want to consider is, if you are having problems with your game master or your game master is having problems with you, either way, okay, if you're having problems with players, problems with game masters, you need to actually sit down like an adult and have a discussion about this. If you've never been a game master, I think you should, if you're going to be using spell casting and changing or trying to affect somebody else's rulings. It's always better to do that rather than not to. In any case, I hope this was useful to you, and if it was, fantastic. I want to thank you for watching and listening. I want to thank all of my patrons who support me on Patreon. Thank you for doing so. Without you, this is just not possible. And all the best with your spell casting and your spells and your magic. Till next time, keep rolling those 20s. Okay, I'm not gone and I'm not finished. We're going to go straight over to my head cam, and my hat is already off. It is a very, very warm room in here right now. I probably should open the door. I'm going to go over and have a look at chat. I can see we're already starting to fill up with a lot of questions. Frank, I might need you to drop your first question down a little bit. If you could cut and paste it and drop it down one more time, if it will let you do so, I would appreciate that. It's just because the poll at the top is blocking my the view of your question around Searing Smite. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to answer your questions. Okay, once I've answered your questions, I'm probably going to be jumping back and forth from my head cam to my desk cam with the maps and miniatures when it's appropriate. And then once I've done all of that, then I'll do some demonstration on spells if there's any time left. Yes. I can see some people have already tried to answer some of your questions. Anyway, let's get started. Now, you might have noticed that I have a group of goblins here. This is my adventuring group. This is a pile of magic or spell cards that I have pre-arranged. I expected and there's a reason why the top one is a 5th level spell, because if I'm going to demonstrate today, I'm probably going to be demonstrating some high level spells rather than some low level spells, because I've done a lot of low level spells. And yes, I've got some various things here just to make life a little bit easier for me. It's stressful to actually explain rules in a live stream. It is why nobody under the sun other than myself generally does this sort of thing, because it's going to get you into a lot of trouble sometimes. You have to know a lot of stuff and you can't get things wrong, which of course is definitely going to happen. So yeah, just give me a second to open my door. Okay, all right, I'm feeling a little bit more comfortable, and let's break down each of your questions that you have. And as I said, I'll be jumping back and forth to that cam in a second. So, Frank, your question here, your first question. Now, as far as I can tell, because I can't read quite the top of it, it's about concentrating on spells like Searing Smite. How can an enemy end the spell if I'm concentrating on it? Part to follow. So, if you are using Searing Smite, and Searing Smite is a concentration spell, concentration can end in a couple of different ways, which I just explained. One, okay, something causes damage to you. In other words, you lose hit points. Okay, when we say damage, that doesn't mean you're taking actual physical injuries, because hit points aren't meat. But if you're dealing with something like Searing Smite and something causes damage to you, then you're going to make a concentration check, which is a constitution check of DC 10, or if it's not DC 10, it's half the damage that you took as long as it's greater than 10. So whichever is higher, just as I mentioned before. There's also another situation which I also mentioned before, and that is you have a situation occur where the game master believes that there's something in the environment that will affect your ability to concentrate on that spell. Maybe you have heavy rain, or it's hailing, and so you're getting hit. Now, the hails aren't really causing that much damage to you, so you're not losing hit points, but it's definitely affecting your concentration. It's distracting you in some way. This doesn't come into play very often because most game masters don't generally read that one sentence that's in the book, so they don't usually implement it. So if I'm looking at something like Searing Smite, which is on page 274, this is what it says here. Okay, it's a bonus action. You cast it on yourself. Okay, it's got a verbal component. Concentration up to 1 minute. So the next time you hit a creature with a melee weapon attack during your weapon's duration, your weapon's flares with white hot intensity, and the attack deals an extra 1d6 fire damage to the target and causes the target to ignite in flames. Okay, so we know that it's going to cause damage or lose hit points for somebody else. Okay, and they're going to be on fire. They're in flames now. At the start of each of its turns until the spell ends, the target must make a Constitution saving throw. Okay, so that's the target that's on fire. On a failed save, it takes 1d6 fire damage. On a successful save, the spell ends. So if the spell continues on and they're on fire, okay, from Searing Smite, if the target or a creature within 5 feet of you uses an action to put out the flames, or some other effect douses the flames, such as the target being submerged in water, the spell ends. So if you are on flames from Searing Smite, you could put out the flames by dipping yourself in water. You could also use your action, because Searing Smite does not stop you from using your action, and you could pat yourself down. You could also say, I drop to the ground and I roll. I drop and roll. That's what you do when you're on fire, right? Somebody else could do that. So there's lots of different ways that you can end the spell effect. Now, in terms of concentration, again, it doesn't stop. Somebody else could attack you and force you to make a concentration check. The individual who's currently on fire from Searing Smite could attack you and force you to make a concentration check and end that smite as well. So there is plenty of different ways that you can end it. Okay, all right. So hopefully that answered your question. I see Shy X here has already kind of tried to answer that question. Did you say anything else? There are 3 ways to stop concentration. Con save from damage, 10 or half your damage, whichever is higher. user is incapacitated or concentration on another spell. There are other ways of ending that. I mean, whether you're ending it because ending the searing smite because a concentration has been broken, or you're ending it because you've done something like put out the flames by patting yourself down with an action, or you've submerged yourself in water. There's a couple of different ways you can deal with it. But all of those would also be covered under that. Okay? All right. So that's their first question down. Whoa, okay. Let's get on to the next one. This one I was looking at and I was thinking, I'm sure that the answer is in Sage Advice for potions, because I get this question a lot. My group has argued about this many, many times. So Frank has said, question 2, why are potions of a spell that requires concentration not requiring concentration? So what he means is, if there is a spell that is normally a concentration spell, and I would imagine probably the most common one you're going to come across is something like a potion of invisibility. Yep, a potion of invisibility. That'd be a potion that you'd probably want to have access to. It's one that would come up quite a lot, and therefore, okay, so what's the deal with that? And I have always been under the assumption, based on what I have read on the internet and what I've read in Raw, but I cannot find it right now, otherwise I would have it ready for you, is that if you drink a potion that is a concentration spell, then yes, you do still have to concentrate on it. Here's the problem. I can't find the section on it that would indicate that, to back that up with a reference somewhere. So I don't have a reference page for you. If I did, I would. So yes, invisibility, concentration for an hour. So you do that, you will be concentrating on that spell. I think the thing to understand about potions and scrolls, I approach a potion and a scroll the same way. Now, whether this is how my home group operate or whether it's Raw, I can't tell you for sure, as I said. But my understanding is, if you use a spell scroll, and it would be invisibility, which is a concentration spell, when you use that scroll to cast the spell, you're still concentrating. It's just made it easier for you to cast it because you don't have to use a spell slot. You don't have to prepare the spell. You don't even have to know the spell. It's all on the scroll. Okay? So if we take that concept of the scroll, now we're taking it over to a potion. Now a potion can be used by anybody, and in some cases so can scrolls. So your potion has all the magic already embedded in it. It has all the elements tied to it. You simply just have to scull the thing and you get the effect. But in my group, we still require potions that are concentration spells to be concentrated on. So there's still a chance of it being, But as I said, I don't have a reference page or a something I can call on, because I could not find it in Sage Advice. And so it's probably sitting on a tweet somewhere that Jeremy Crawford made. And who knows if Jeremy Crawford, when he answered that question, was currently sober and he wasn't too tired, or he'd been drinking too much and he answered the question and just didn't really know what he was saying at the time. So there's been times when Jeremy has sort of contradicted himself. Not always, but I would say to you, Frank, if you're the game master, rule how you think potions should work the way you want them to work. And a lot of people, I think, get confused. Dungeons and Dragons combat is not chess. Okay, you're not playing chess. There's only really one set of rules for chess. Oh, that's not really true. There are some variations. But D&D is not really supposed to be a competitive battle, where you're moving chess pieces around. I know it looks like chess because there's squares everywhere and miniatures and so forth, but it's not chess. So if you're the game master, just rule how you think potions should work. Works, because that's what my group does. Everybody in my group game masters slightly differently, so we have to adjust for each person anyway. But most of the time in my group, we just go potions, spells, concentration, invisibility. Okay, you got to concentrate. You can lose that spell. Okay, moving on. Said enough. Frank's next question, question 3. Here we go. Back to invisibility. Why is a spell like invisibility requiring concentration? Okay, so first off, why does the spell concentration, the spell invisibility require concentration? Well, first off, there's no point asking me because I did not design the spell. Okay, I'm not the designer. Okay, I may have been a playtester for D&D Next and the beta and the alpha playtest, which I was, but I don't determine myself that. The designers of the game determine if invisibility is in concentration. Why they might have decided to make invisibility concentration is probably going back to a combination of spells being put together that made you unstoppable. I suspect the reason why invisibility is a concentration spell is because you combine that with something like fly. If you can fly and you're invisible, you are unstoppable. There's just not much that anybody can do. It's almost impossible to target you unless you have see invisibility. If you don't have see or being able to detect invisible creatures in some way, you're kind of screwed. So I would imagine the reason why invisibility is concentration is because they do not want invisibility to be combined with fly at the same time. There are ways of doing it though. You can get somebody else to cast invisibility on you, okay? Then have somebody else, then that person, if they got the fly spell, they cast it on themselves and now they can fly. But I mean, if you look at how invisibility and fly are structured, for example, let me see if I can find the page here. So I'm not saying the wrong thing. Let me just take my glasses off because I'm not gonna be able to see very well. Where is it? Fly. Where are you? Here we go. So fly. It's a touch spell. So you can touch yourself if you want to, or you can touch somebody else. So you can cast fly on anybody. So somebody else. So if you have if you have a wizard who got the spell, they cast fly on somebody who they want them to fly, and then somebody else who's got invisibility, different spellcaster, maybe another wizard or a sorcerer or something like that, they cast invisibility on the same person. Suddenly you've got somebody who can fly and is invisible. Essentially, it's like flying invisible death. This is one of the reasons why they've probably made invisibility concentration, and fly, if you'll notice, is also concentration as well, okay? Because that combination in other versions of the game has been unstoppable. Okay, next part of your question is, but detect invisibility or see invisibility doesn't require concentration. And that is true. And I think the reason is exactly what I just mentioned. The reality is that they're not worried about people having to detect invisibility or see invisibility and invisibility on themselves at the same time. It's the combination of invisibility and fly that they're concerned about. That's why they've probably done that. Next, or armor spells doesn't, but Shield of Faith does. Okay, so the armor spell, mage armor, is really only available to certain types of spellcasters. These are spellcasters that usually have a very low armor class. You know, something like mage armor is available to a wizard. Wizards do not have high armor classes. Yep. Now, this is speculation on my part. Remember, I am not a designer. I was an alpha play tester and a beta tester for this game. Okay, I don't make the decisions about this. I can only speculate as to why they've done this. And you're asking me to speculate, really. Okay, and then you've got a Shield of Faith spell. Shield of Faith spell is usually going to be cast by somebody who has pretty good armor, like a cleric has Shield of Faith. Yep, and because they have Shield of Faith, really, we don't want to have that spell be something that lasts 8 hours or 24 hours or a really long time. So that's why Shield of Faith has probably been structured that way. That is, again, as I said, speculation. Shield of Faith. Okay. I want to move past all of the why did the designers do something a particular way onto different questions if I can help it. So please people, I mean, I can speculate till the cows go home about why designers have written rules a particular way, and I can speculate and try to answer those questions if you like. I don't know how useful that is to you, because frankly, what, and I'm not being frank, I'm not being giving you a hard time or anything, but how useful is it for me to speculate on why the designers did something? I don't know that it's very useful to people. So this is why I've answered those questions. I would appreciate if we don't get too many of the why did the designers do this way questions if we can help it. Anyway, keep going. Frank, question 4, not about con. So Spirit Guardian spell. I am a large, huge, gargantuan caster. How far out from these casters does it reach? Does it start from the center square or the outside corner out to 15? Okay, so the point at which your spell is going to be cast, depending on if your size is not medium or small, and you're dealing with you're now large, huge, or gargantuan, and you cast Spirit Guardians. Okay, every group that I know of operates slightly different with regard to how this works, depending on what version of the game they have played. If they've played previous versions of the game, normally they will require that the spell is either centered on the individual, right in the smack middle in terms of squares that you cover, or from any corner from you, depending on the way the spell has been worded. So even amongst when we were playing D&D 3.5, and I know this is not 5e is not 3.5, but even that, we had interpretations. I could see game masters who could say, look, based on the way the rules are written and what I've read online, there are 2 ways I can operate. So, so if there's 2 ways you could potentially operate in 3.5, and 5e is more nebula than 3.5, because 3.5 is very, very codified, then you're going to have the same sort of problem occurring. I do not believe that there is anything in the sage advice that Jeremy has mentioned regarding that. So let's just get to the actual spell and see if we can, is there any clues as to what was going on here. Spirit Guardians is on page 278. I'm not using the maps and miniatures right now because you're asking really, really hard questions. So I'm having to look at a book. So Spirit Guardians, so it's targeted on yourself, 15-foot radius. You call forth spirits to protect you. They flitter around you to a distance of 15 feet for the duration. If you are good or neutral, their spectral form appears angelic or fey, your choice. If you are evil, they appear fiendish. When you cast a spell, you can designate any number of creatures you can see to be affected by it. An affected creature's speed is halved in the area, and when the creature enters the area for the first time on a turn or starts its turn there, it must make a wisdom saving throw. On a saving throw, failed saving throw, the creature takes 3d8 radiant damage, and if you are good or neutral, and 3d8 necrotic damage if you are good, or if you are evil. So you take radiant necrotic damage if you're evil, and you take radiant damage if you are good or neutral. Okay. On a successful save, the creature takes half as much damage. Okay, so I think from reading the spell, it's not obvious by reading the spell, but I think I got the answer for you. Okay, I think I've got exactly what you're looking for. But I do not want to do it unfortunately, I do not want to actually demonstrate it with me just talking, because it's not going to work. So instead, we're going to go to the battle mat, and I'm going to indicate to you part of the problem that you're running into. And then you'll be able to see, based off that, what you're probably wanting to try and do. So let's just move some of the stuff out of the way. And let's imagine that we have Spirit Guardians have been cast by this character here. Okay? Now, Spirit Guardians, as it indicated, has 15 feet range from you. Now, if you are simply a medium-sized creature or a small creature, 15 feet from you, if we take the center point, I'm going to show you 2 different ways of doing this. If you take the center point, that means that your extension is essentially 12.5 feet from you, which means you cover the first square, the second square, and part of the third square, but not all of the third square, if that makes sense. I'm just going to move that back so the camera looks so. So you're actually shortening the range a little bit. I mean, game-wise, it's tactically probably not going to make that much sense. It's also going to have very little effect because as long as a creature was in there, even if you're partly covering that distance, they would still be affected. Okay, so it wouldn't really matter that much. Okay, so this is not a situation we need to worry too much about. Now, if I say, okay, well, what we're actually covering is 15 feet from the edge of the miniature, if you're thinking tactically. So there's 5 feet, 10, 15. Okay, so you've covered all the miniatures completely with it. You've got a few in the range. Wonderful. And that's a medium or small creature. Okay. Now, if we increase the size of our miniature, I'm going to use a large miniature now. This is a gelatinous cube. I've got nothing else to sort of demonstrate with. Oh no, I do. I can get something that's not quite so awkward. So if we're doing our Spirit Guardians again, this time we take the center. So from the center of the creature, if we're casting from that point, you'll notice that the area that we affect is nothing outside of the creature. The only part of the area that is being affected is actually the creature. Okay, so that's 5 feet from the center. So if we go out another 10 feet, because Spirit Guardians goes a bit further than that, there we go. So we haven't affected very much. There's 10 feet from the center. So we go 15 feet from the center. We only affect a lot less creatures, okay, as you can see. But also too, you're not really affecting, if you take it from the center, you're not really affecting 15 feet from the creature. You're actually only affecting 10 feet from the creature. So I would not take the center point of the miniature as the best way to approach this. I would take the edge of your miniature, okay? Whether it's the corner of the miniature, of the square, or it's the edge of the miniature, I really don't think it's going to matter too much. I would just take the space that it occupies and go from the outside edge rather than from the center of the miniature. Because you really do fundamentally nerf a spell like that. And it gets worse, because if I was to go up another scale and have an even larger creature, which I don't have available on me, can I use this? Is this going to be big enough? Okay, let's say if we're now going up another scale. So we weren't just large, now we are huge size. You can see the problem. We're not even affecting, you can't even see from the camera angle, unfortunately. You're not even going to affect from the center. You've lost 7.5 feet of your distance, which means that you'll be lucky that anything beyond 2 squares from you is going to be affected. So I would, as I said, probably not a good idea to rule it that way, because it's not going to make a lot of sense. You're kind of breaking the spell a little bit by doing it that way. And you're also probably going to piss off your players a lot, because they know that suddenly their range has changed because you are a larger size. That would be my answer to that question. So when you're using Spirit Guardians, start from the outside edge, not from the center of the miniature. That would be my advice. Okay, so there's a few... Frank, sorry about these difficult questions. I'm a DM GM, good, and a player of 30 years, and it flusters me sometimes. Thank you for your best. You are welcome, Frank. Keep asking your questions. If you are a game master and a player, then you will need to know the answers to these, and I totally understand. But also, Frank, I want to make it clear, if you have 30 years of experience, Dungeons and Dragons is all about game masters making rulings, and sometimes you will have to, because the complexity of the rules, particularly magic and spells, I love playing wizards, are so complicated that you really do need to make a decision about what makes sense given the situation. Whether it's a good decision or a bad decision is really completely up to you and everybody else. Like, just stay out of somebody else's game. That's my advice to people. All I'm doing here is doing my best to sort of interpret things for you. Okay, next. Shy X, the target can deal damage to try to break. Yes, that's cool. Question 2, just designed as a consumable. 3, game designer choice, probably. Yes, that's very much so. So we got past that. Osiris, hello. Warlock Book of Ancient Secrets. What does that mean? Is that a question, Osiris? It feels like it's not a question. I'm not too sure what to do with that. Okay, next thing. Question 4. I believe the spell can start at the edge. Yes. Okay, we've covered that. Shy X has essentially said what I've just demonstrated and talked about. Fred Huber, who's a patron, thank you for being here. Let's look at wish, forbiddance, guards and wards, if you have time. Okay, so I've used, as a game master, I've only used wish once. Wish is a very, very difficult, hard spell to roll on. Forbiddance, we can get into that, but if we do wisdom, it's going to take me a long time to explain that. Now, I've had multiple people ask me that question, so what I'm going to do is we're going to say Fred will explain wisdom, because you guys keep asking. Everybody at some point keeps going back to, what about wish? How do I deal with wish? How do I roll wish? Because it's a very nebulous spell, the way it's structured, right? So I will answer that question today, Fred, because you keep bringing it up, and so do other people. And every time I get to magic, we wind up here. What I want to do is the next 6 minutes, let's say the next 6 minutes, I will do my best to answer all the questions as if I can that are in here. But after 6 minutes, even if I haven't answered all the questions you have put into the chat, we are going back to wish. Does that seem fair enough? People will let me know in the chat, and we'll see how we go. So wish, in 6 minutes, I will discuss it. God help me. Anyway. Yes, so you've covered the smite thing. That's good. Yes, Fred has also covered how you can end the smiting, searing smite. Hello, Jasper. How are you doing? Do I need magic to ride a great cat? In my games, Jasper, you will always require a lot of magic, probably the wish spell, to be able to ride a cat in my game. So those of you who are wondering what the hell I'm saying, Jasper knows the joke, and we've had this discussion before. So I'm not trying to be harsh or horrible, but it is an in joke between me and Jasper. Okay, it's probably not for you. Moving on. When playing magic users, I always type out the spell my character had and kept it with the character sheet. That's fine. You can also buy things, or you can print it out. I always advise people, even if you don't have time to write the spell out because there's just too much work to be done, at least write the page number beside the spell on your character sheet so you can reference the book. And if you don't have a player's handbook in your casting spells, it's really going to be helpful for the game master that you don't rely on their player's handbook or somebody else's. Go get your own. I know it's expensive, but seriously, if you're a spellcaster, you need to have the spells in front of you. It's just too hard to do. I play a wizard right now. I play a lot of wizards as it happens in spellcasters, and without it, you're really making life difficult for everybody else and yourself. So yeah, page numbers perfectly fine. Okay, next. Pale Rider. No, you just need to accept and train by the okay, Isle of Dread. I think I'm going to be talking about the Isle of Dread at some point. It feels like that's coming. You can blame Glenn from Mr. Welsh YouTube channel for that. You can blame him. He's he's been collecting up YouTubers recently. God knows how many people are going to get through that video. 50 YouTubers. Anyway, how is it up to you? Put the result as a fire is put out. Okay, I'm not quite sure. We're still going on the smiting thing, aren't we? Thank you, Ramiro. Hopefully I got your name right. No nonsense video. I'm trying not to do no nonsense videos. So this is why you haven't seen any clickbaity stuff. I've been writing a clickbaity video, and I haven't been able to bring myself to actually say it just because I think it'll scare people too much. Poke them in the eye like the Three Stooges. Oh, good lord. On how D&D is not like chess. Yes. Well, it's it's not new. It should be obvious, but it's not always. It just looks like chess. How could you just drink a potion of invisibility and then fly, so that overpowered is still there? Yes, you can. You can drink a potion of invisibility, and somebody else could cast the fly spell on you. But it makes it harder to achieve that, Frank. That's the reason why the designers did it that way. Yeah. Anyway, let's keep going. Are we up to? We're 2 minutes, and I'm talking about the wish spell, people. In 2 minutes, I talk about the wish spell. Here we go. This is going to be interesting. Shy. Gust of wind blows 10 feet wide. If I center it in my space, can it theoretically affect 15 feet wide? Question. Including myself and the spell's effect. I can willingly fail my own save to move myself 10 feet. That's a very good question. I would say technically you've created a... Look, usually you don't want to be in the gust of wind. Usually, but if you were trying to push yourself around using gust of wind, maybe that changes things. I think you need to approach it in the same way we use gust of wind in our pirate sailing campaign that my home group play. We use gust of wind to get the sails moving when we need to move the ship. But we don't necessarily have to be in the space with the gust of wind, because that would just move us around. We just need to put the gust of wind in the right place to affect the area we want to affect. And that's usually not necessarily a creature. It might be an object like a jib or a sail, right? So let me just find gust of wind so I don't balls this up. I have been using gust of wind recently, by the way, so I'm not completely new, but I just don't want to get this wrong. So gust of wind, second level spell. It's on yourself, 10 feet line. Okay, so as rules as written, you're probably not targeting yourself with the gust of wind. As I don't think that was the intention of gust of wind, and it's centered on yourself, and it's a 60-foot line. Okay, so a line of strong wind, 60 feet long and 10 feet wide, blasts from you in a direction you choose for the spell's duration. Each creature that starts its turn in the line must succeed on a strength saving throw or be pushed 15 feet away from you in a direction following the line. So the intention behind the spell already indicates that you're probably dealing with trying to move somebody else, not yourself. It is not designed to move you around, really, okay? That doesn't mean you could not house roll it that way. Let's keep going. Any creature in the line must spend 2 feet of movement for every 1 foot it moves when moving close to you. So it's to stop people from getting closer to you. It's not really designed to push you around. The gust disperses gas or vapor, and it extinguishes candles, torches, and similar unprotected flames in the area. So it can affect the environment as well. It causes protected flames such as those of lanterns to dance wildly and has a 50% chance to extinguish them. So there's still a chance of extinguishing something that's protected by it. As a bonus action, on each of your turns before the spell ends, you can change the direction to which in which the line blasts from you. So we use it, gust of wind, to affect the sail. So we point it from ourselves to push our sail. It's not really designed to move you around. It's not like a different form of teleportation, if you know what I mean. So I think that's the intent behind the spell. How you roll it, again, you know, I think it is not intended that you center it on yourself. I think that's the gist of it. You do it from the edge is probably the smartest way to approach that. Are we up? Yep. Okay, we're out of time. So all your questions, you need to hold on. I'm going to put a hashtag in here. I am now talking about wish spell. Stop questions for now. I will talk about the wish spell. Okay, this is just to stop people keep asking questions when I'm actually working on something else. Stop for now. I will talk about the wish spell. Okay, and we'll get back to questions after. Okay, the wish spell. If I'm going to do the wish spell, I'm having a lozenge in my mouth. And I'm grabbing a lozenge before I start. Now, the wish spell, most of you are never ever going to have to worry about the wish spell. It is a high level spell. Unless you're playing at really high level, you're never going to see it. Okay? If you're a game master and you're terrified of playing at high level because of the wish spell, can I assure you that it's not as scary as you might think. If anything, it's quite amusing just the way you might have to roll it. But let's have a look. Wish is definitely easier than earlier editions, for sure. And if you hate the wish spell, I totally understand. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to read out the spell and I'm going to stop and comment when I think it's appropriate to comment. Does that make sense? This is on page 288. It's a really long spell. It's like half a page long. So I have to stop every once in a while, okay? Here we go. So the wish spell is a 9th level spell. It's the highest level you can get in D&D 5e. Although if you weren't aware, you can have a 10th level spell, but they were removed by Mystara. So there were 10th level spells, but they no longer exist. Gone. That's why it only goes to 9 now. So it's a casting time of 1 action. It has a range of self, verbal component only, and it's instantaneous. So it happens straight away. The wish spell is when you're playing at high level. I want to explain now. When you're playing at high level, when you get access to wish and somebody uses it, it is usually used to get out of some stupid shit that they got themselves into. It is always used for that because the risk of using wish is just too prevalent, okay? So one of the things you will find is players don't use the wish spell that often as long as they understand how the spell works, because there are so many risks. So you probably will very rarely come across it, and they're very rarely going to have access to it. And they will always be in with their back foot. They'll always be in a terrible situation where they have to literally change the reality of their world. Whether that's because they accidentally destroyed the world at high level, which does happen, or they have to turn back time because something happened that they want to change. Turning back time or traveling in time is quite a common thing with wish. Or they need to use the wish spell on a god because they're fighting gods and they don't have anything else they can think of that they could use. Okay. Wish. Wish is the mightiest spell a mortal creature can cast. By simply speaking aloud, you can alter the very foundations of reality in accordance with your desires. The basic use of this spell is to duplicate any other spell of 8th level or lower. So the intention behind it is you'll not be able to duplicate another 9th level spell with wish. Okay? But I can assure you that most of the time you don't cast a 9th level spell to try to duplicate the effect of an 8th level spell, even if you can't cast that spell as part of your class. It's usually not used that way. Okay? But you can. You don't need to meet any requirements in that spell, including the costly components. So you can use it in this way to eliminate the fact that maybe you don't have the components to cast an 8th level spell or 7th level spell, something that's of that level. Maybe it's not even a spell that you can normally cast and you want to cast that spell. Usually there isn't a reason for that. The only time I can think of that somebody might use the wish spell is they're really desperate and they want to bring somebody back to life, or like I said, time travel or change reality. Next, the spell simply takes effect. Alternatively, you can create one of the following effects of your choice. Here we go. You create one object of up to 25,000 gold pieces in value that isn't a magical item. So you can't make a magical item out of it, but you can make something worth a lot of money. The object can be no more than 300 feet in any dimension and it appears in an unoccupied space you can see on the ground. I can almost guarantee you that players are never going to consider at high level when they get access to the wish spell, consider using it in this way. 25,000 gold pieces is peanuts. You wouldn't bother doing it. So if, as a game master, if they do it that way, it's no skin off your nose. Do not ever get worried about them having 25,000 gold pieces, because that's chump change for high level play. Next, you allow up to 20 creatures that you can see to regain all hit points, and you end all effects on them described in the Greater Restoration spell. So in other words, you can affect every creature, okay, that you can see, up to 20, get all their hit points back, and you can use it just like Greater Restoration at the same time. Most of the time, that's never going to come up either. Not unless you're really desperate and your cleric and your bards and your healers don't have any spells left. So that doesn't come up very often. So never get worried about that effect either. It's not a big deal. Not when you're casting Wish. It's not a big deal. There's always another day. If you're trying to kill the player characters, not the players, the characters. If you're trying to kill them with a monster, there's always another monster. There's always another opportunity if that's where your head is at. Okay, next. You grant up to 10 creatures that you can see resistance to damage type you choose. Now, resistance only halves damage. Again, I can never think of a time when a player would consider doing something like this. If they ever do something like this, don't worry about it. It's not a big deal. It's not damage immunity, it's damage resistance. So 10 creatures is just to make sure that you cover the entire group if you have a big party, right? Next, you grant up to 10 creatures you can see immunity to a single spell or other magical effect for 8 hours. Now that's pretty powerful. For instance, you can make yourself and all of your comrades immune to a lich's life drain attack. Now this is a very strong effect, and it's probably much more likely that a player will do something like this. For example, I can think of times where people have tried to go to the plane of fire, and it's all very well having fire resistance on the plane of fire, but if you're on the plane of fire, you're probably always taking fire damage. You're always being affected by the heat and the fire. So Wish to enable you to travel for a short period of time in the plane of fire would make sense. To avoid a lich's life drain effect or attack is quite smart and quite reasonable that 9th level spell be used to do something like that, because you don't want to be drained by a lich if you can help it. You don't want to be drained by anybody, frankly. So again, I wouldn't worry so much about that effect. Okay, next. This is where things get interesting. Wish is this is the one time where it comes up. Here we go. You undo a single recent event by forcing a re-roll of any roll made within the last round, including your last roll. So having a re-roll of this kind with a Wish spell is really, I would not worry about that either. Hello Nacho Man, how are you? The reason being is there are so many different ways to get inspiration in the game, and if you have a bad roll and you want to get rid of that bad roll, then just using your inspiration is probably the smartest thing. Bards have bardic inspiration, so using this in this way makes no sense whatsoever to re-roll something. Here we go. Reality reshapes itself to accommodate the new result. For example, a Wish spell could undo an opponent's successful save. So the idea is you could change the roll that a game master has made. The problem with changing the roll of a game master is there's no guarantee that it's going to be what you want, or a foe's critical hit, so you could change a critical hit for a foe, or a failed saving throw for a friend. You can force the reroll to be made with advantage or disadvantage. So they're saying, okay, we can actually force the issue. It's not just a reroll, but we can make it with advantage or disadvantage. Again, it's a 9th level spell. It's not a big deal. you can choose whether to use the reroll or the original roll. So in other words, if you find that the second roll with advantage or disadvantage is not going to be working for you, you can go with whatever the original roll is rather than the new roll. This here only partly undoes something in a very mechanical way. There's no way that your players are going to consider that as an option for the wish spell, when there are so many ways they can get inspiration on their roll or somebody else's roll. The only thing that's a bit of a problem is applying disadvantage to your game master's rolls or changing their rolls. But that's why you have the potent feature for the wizard. You know, a divine wizard can change somebody else's roll if they want to, and you're much more likely to see that. So you're probably almost never going to see wish used like that. Here we go. Now we start getting into the weeds. You might be able to achieve something beyond the scope of the above examples, because all of the above examples are just examples. Wish can go beyond that. There are lots of things you could potentially do. State your wish to the DM or Game Master as precisely as possible. So when you're actually laying it out, be really, really clear about what you want the spell to do, the wish spell. The DM has great latitude in ruling what occurs in such an instance. The greater the wish, the greater the likelihood something goes wrong. And so this is the big problem, right? This spell might simply fail. The effect you desire might only be partially achieved, or you might suffer some unforeseen consequence as a result of how you worded the spell. So in other words, right now your DM is being put into a position of being a evil genie, kind of, or a genie full stop. For example, wishing that a villain were dead might propel you forward in time to a period when that villain is no longer alive. So in other words, it doesn't guarantee that they just fall dead in front of you. You might wind up having to wait quite a bit of time, and who knows what has happened while that villain has still been alive. Yep. Effectively removing you from the game. So suddenly, whatever you've done here, you've kind of jumped ahead to the end of the story. It's like reading a book, a pick a path book. You know those pick a path twist plot books that you used to get, fighting fantasy, where you would read it and like, I just want to get to the end, and you just find the end entry and you read it. So you've eliminated the entire adventure. You succeeded, hopefully in some way, and you've eliminated all of the adventure. And so you've written yourself out of the adventure. You might find that by the time you get there, you've reached the maximum cap for your character advancement too. Game masters could do that. Similar, wishing for a legendary magic item or artifact might instantly transport you to the presence of the item's current owner. So it doesn't mean, for example, just like, okay, I want the Book of Vile Evil in my hand, thank you, or Vile Darkness, shall I say. Well, yes, that might happen, but you might also find that you are standing in a room that you weren't standing in before, holding a book with somebody else who's holding the book, okay? Some necromancer, some lich, or whatever, even a god. So there's lots of ways that game masters can twist this. This is why wish is not fundamentally a choice that players use unless they have no other option available to them. Next, the stress of casting the spell to produce any effect other than duplicating another spell weakens you. So in other words, and if you're doing something outside of the spells that are listed from like level 8 to backward, then it's going to have a fairly horrible effect. After enduring that stress, each time you cast a spell until you finish a long rest, you take 1d8 necrotic damage. Okay, so when you make it clear now, most players, when they cast a wish spell, immediately will go and take a long rest, even if they've still got spell slots available. You know why? Just in case of this very, very, very thing. Okay, so you take 1d10 necrotic damage per level of that spell. This damage can't be reduced or prevented in any way. In addition, your strength drops to 3 if it isn't 3 or lower already. And this happens for 2d4 days. So it's not permanent. You could take damage. You could probably survive that. The problem is at level 20, if you're a level 20 spellcaster casting Wish, it's going to be pretty rough, okay? And if the level of the spell is 8, it's probably not going to kill you outright. So you wouldn't ever... Players don't cast Wish when they have only got a few hit points left, if they can help it, because it's probably going to kill them outright. Yep, instant death. For each of these days that you spend resting and doing nothing more than light activity, you regain your remaining recovery time decreases by 2 days. Finally, there is a 33. Now, this is the worst bit. There is a 33% chance that you are unable to cast Wish ever again if you suffer this stress. This is the biggest problem with casting Wish. There's a 1 in 3 chance that you'll never get to cast Wish again, which is why people who use Wish in the game usually wait until there's a situation where there's nothing they can potentially do to solve the problem. And I've always found that that is the reason why, even when high-level play occurs, people don't use Wish. Now, I'm going to give you some examples of when Wish has been used that I know of, and one situation where it was used and I was the game master, okay? Just to give you a sort of like a heads up. I had a player who had access to Wish and they would not use it for that very reason, that 33% chance that they would never get to use it again. So it becomes a spell, and they were a sorcerer, I believe. So they had been holding off on it. My situation was clear. They had done something that had caused a singularity, a black hole to open up in their world. And their entire world, due to their very foolish and silly behavior, and they knew it was going to cause problems, but they decided to poke the lion, and I was the lion that day, and see what would happen. And they made it worse. They made it 14 times worse than they needed to. Okay, this is back when if you stick a portable hole or a bag of holding into another bag of holding, you create a singularity or a black hole. Now that might be just a small one and just be temporary, but if you do that with multiple bags of holding with Fred's going to probably have your entire world to get sucked into it. And of course you all get sucked in and crushed into the black hole as well. So they decided, well, that means we're going to all die and we're going to end the world. So it's not just our characters dying, everybody dies. This is a good time to use Wish. So they wanted to turn back time. Turning back time is a big deal. This is why I say Wish is usually used to turn back time. They were successful. He did not lose the Wish spell, as if you're wondering. He spent an entire week thinking very carefully about how he wanted to word the spell. And I did not get nasty about it. Because I thought it was just hilarious that they had done something that was just... I mean, they knew it was going to happen. They knew it was going to happen. And they still did it anyway. So anyway, in any case, they did save themselves and the world by using the Wish spell. They went back in time and changed the event that occurred, created the disaster. Other times that I've seen it happen is when, you know, you're dealing with a god or a deity, and really a Wish spell is the only way to actually stop the god. You know, gods are hard, you know, not all gods have hit points. So to actually deal with a god is actually very difficult. The question then becomes, as a game master, do you believe that a 9th level spell should be able to end a god, kill a god, or transport a god into a prison for indefinitely, or at least for a long period of time? Are we using it to reshape the world? So if the world has suddenly become a desert, or it's been affected in such a way that it's mostly sort of dying, and you want to bring it back to life and make it green again, then maybe the Wish spell gets put into play. I've seen that kind of come up a couple of times at my end as a player. But again, Wish doesn't come up that often. This is why I don't usually talk about the Wish spell. And I spent almost 20-something minutes talking about it. So let's get on to the rest of your questions. Now, hashtag, please continue your questions about spells and magic. That is the extent of what I will talk about in terms of wish. I don't want to do a whole stream on the wish spell. I can see people mentioning it, Jasper. I really don't want to sit down and talk about the wish spell in a lot of detail. I just don't think that there's much point. Yeah, good luck. Thank you. Now let's see. We're going to move past here. I'm just pulling out the wish stuff before we move on to the other things, which is easier. Yes. Yes, there is yes, I've talked about that. And as a game master, if you hate the wish spell, I totally understand. And first there was a 7th level limited wish spell. Yes, there was. Yes, that's true. No, the wish spell is just one wish spell. That's it. You're introducing the deck of many things, so wish could be in the cards for me. Pun intended. Well, yeah, probably. I've already talked to you about how the deck of many things has unfolded for me, and I don't really want to talk about the deck of many things if I can help it. But if you must ask me those questions, I will go into more detail if I have to. I don't know. We feel like we've gone from talking about the basics of Dungeons and Dragons, magic and spell casting, right to the top of the most difficult things to adjudicate and deal with. Let's go straight to wish, and then after that, the deck of many things. Here we go. What do we got here next? New question. The idea came from Burning Hands cone, and even the slightest square would be affected. Cones are great. Cones are great. Now, Burning Hands, what are people doing with Burning Hands? Your comment is kind of odd. I'm wondering, how are people adjudicating Burning Hands? Burning Hands is very, very simple. I don't know. You don't include yourself in Burning Hands as a cone. Do you know what I mean? If you're using Burning Hands, you flame somebody else. Let's maybe I should let's get the map going. And Burning Hands, I'm pretty sure I've got that spell here somewhere. Where are you? Burning Hands. There it is. There, I got Burning Hands. Right, let's talk about Burning Hands, because I feel like are people doing something odd with this, or are they just is that just related? Did you mention it in such a way that it's out of context? I don't know. So let's do Burning Hands while I'm waiting for questions. Burning Hands. And I'm going to use the battle mat in this case because I feel like that's going to be more suitable for this situation. Bum bum bum. Burning Hands. Here we go. This is Burning Hands. And we want to scorch somebody. Of course we do. We always want to scorch somebody. Burning Hands is a cone. So on my template here, you'll see that there is a cone marked, okay? The cone indicates how far it can go. We can have one that's 5 feet in a cone, 10 feet, and up to 15 feet cones, okay? With a Burning Hands, the cone that you're creating is a 15-foot cone. So it's quite large. So you can affect quite a large area. So we've fortunately got a template for that. So this is how Burning Hands works. Burning Hands, casting time of one action, from yourself, 15-foot cone, instantaneous, verbal, somatic, as you hold your hands with your thumbs touching and your fingers spread, in a thin sheet of flame shooting forth from your outstretched fingertips, okay, each creature in a 15-foot cone must make a dexterity saving throw. A creature takes 3d6 fire damage on a failed save and half as much damage on a successful one. The fire ignites any flammable objects in the area that aren't being worn or carried. So, let's take our individual. It said fingertips, so we do not start our burning hands from the center of our miniature. Otherwise, we would be burning ourselves. That would be stupid, okay? And it's quite clear from the description of the spell that that's not what their intent was. It's a completely different intent. So when you're marking it out, whether it's from a corner or one edge of your miniature, it doesn't matter. Just pick the right place, line it up, and whoever's in the area is the ones that are going to be affected, okay? That's it. It's as simple as that. So we can position it in such a way so that we get as many as possible. We can angle it as well, so we can play around with the angle so we get everything. I can potentially get 5 of those goblins right now. And all 5, so the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, all have to go and make unfortunately, they're going to have to make a saving throw. Okay, which is exactly what we want. We want them to burn alive. It's a dexterity saving throw. So, dexterity saving throw, DC for this little sucker is going to be, let's say, 13. I'm just saying it's a level 1 character, it's a 13. The DC is going to be 13. Okay, we got a +2, okay, and we make our save for each one of them. And we'll do all 5. So the first one, we save. Do we get it? We've got a 12. 10 and 2 is 12. Okay, you failed. You're going to take full damage. Next one. I've got a 13 and a 2. Okay, so that's a save. Okay, did my dexterity save, and it's pretty good. So he's going to save. He doesn't take full damage. Next one. I've got a 17. 17 and a 2. So he saves. So he's not going to take full damage. Great. Wonderful. Keep going. Got a 14, 14 and 2 is 16. Great, that one saves as well. That's greater than 13. DC's 13 at this present time. Okay, level 1 character. And I got a 9, I think it was. 9 and 2 is 11. So he fails. So we're now established who's being hit and how much damage is going to occur. Okay, and you're going to roll some dice for that, obviously. 3d6. So we grab our 3d6. And I rolled 2, 2 and a 3, and that came to a grand total of 4. So the ones who failed will take 7 points of damage. The ones who succeeded will only take half of 7. Half of 7 is 3.5. You can't have a 0.5. Round down to 3. Okay. The other ones that did succeed take 3 points of fire damage. And anything that isn't worn or on them is going to be ignited, and you can essentially burn a building if you wanted to. You don't have to target creatures. Okay, so that's how your spell would work. Pretty simple, pretty basic, nice and easy. Okay, let's get rid of that. Okay, okay, let's go back to your questions and see what else you've got here while we still have time. I've got a little bit more time before I have to leave. Does Revivify technically target objects, dead creatures? Oh, gosh. Okay, all right. Let's pull up that spell. Let's have a look. If you are dead, technically you're no longer a creature. Do you know what I mean? If you are dead, you're no longer a living creature. You're a dead creature. So I suppose you could classify yourself as an object. I don't know where this question is going, Shy X. So I'm going to do my best to untangle what hidden meanings you have left in there that you have not spelled out for me. Revivify is on page 272. Okay, here we go. So 3rd level spell. We use it a lot in my game. We're currently level 10, and our characters have been dying a lot recently, and so is Raise Dead and Reincarnate being used quite a bit. But Revivify has been our go-to quite a bit. Here we go. So as an action, you can cast it. You touch something. It has a material component of 300 gold pieces worth of diamonds. You have a verbal, somatic, and material component, and the materials are consumed. So the diamonds will be gone after this. It's instantaneous. You touch a creature. It says creature that has died within the last minute. That creature returns to life with 1 hit point. This spell can't return to life a creature that has died of old age, nor can it restore any missing body parts. It's really clear how this spell works. Revivify is not that complicated. It does state that you have to be a creature, but it also states that you have to have been a creature that died recently, okay, within the last minute. So I think there's no confusion. You're not going to be using Revivify to animate an object. You might say, but what if I want to use Revivify to bring a cup of coffee back to life. It was never alive to begin with. It doesn't fall within this. So I don't think you have too much to worry about with regard to that one. Anyway, I don't know if that necessarily answered your question or whether that was actually a question or what was going on there. But technically, I don't see that there's needs to be any confusion around Revivify. Technically, you are a creature that died recently within the last minute. That's all you need to know. A whole stream on Wish in the future. Jasper, are you kidding? Nobody's going to watch that thing, and it would just mess with my brain too much. Okay. Anyway, let's keep going. We got off the Wish stuff. We're moving on to the other stuff, right? We've got some real questions that aren't the Wish. Wish has been deleted. Some people have deleted Wish. Deck of many things should always be stacked. I'm not quite sure what you mean, Fred Huber. Limited Wish was much more useful because it was much less likely to be abused by players or the DM. Again, I don't feel like you can abuse the Wish spell because the Wish spell is a 9th level spell. The intention behind a 9th level spell is to completely change the fabric of nature, the world, and another creature. You know, I really don't know. I think if you're getting upset about Wish at 9th level, don't play at that level. Why would you worry about that sort of thing? It's Wish. If you're getting a 9th level spell, how high a level do you need to be to get Wish? Yeah? Is it really something to concern yourself? You have to be level, where is it? 17. Level 17. How many of you have played to level 17? There might be a few of you around, but I bet there aren't too many. I would not worry about Wish as a spell. Let them use it however the hell they like. You know what I mean? It's always amusing that there's always a chance they'll never get to use it again, or they might actually kill themselves with it. You know, there's always that possibility as well. I doubt it's likely because they would have to have cast it when they were on 1 hit point or something stupid like that. You've got a lot of hit points. I've never had a high level wizard die from Meteor Storm, and that's 20d6. You know, in the area that it's falling on, and they've never died from that. They might have gone down, but they never were instantly vaporized, you know, or instantly killed. So, yeah. Anyway. Next. Calrel. Hello, Calrel. How do you handle anti-magic metals effects on casters and magic creatures? God almighty, what a question. Such as shackles negating their magic. Using a shield from magic. Okay, so I have to unpack anti-magic a little bit. Anti-magic materials are homebrew to the best of my knowledge. Yeah, that's for 5e. There is anti-magic, obviously. Okay, anti-magic field is a spell, but anti-magic metals is not really a thing. That would be a homebrew thing. So how you adjudicate it and do it is completely up to you. Let's go to anti-magic field, and let's deal with that spell, and then extrapolate from there. I really don't feel like today is a beginner. Let's learn about magic. This feels like today all of the people who follow me have shown up to ask their really complicated magic questions. I have I started a thing. Drink of water. Oh, you mean you should arrange your deck of many things so you know which card is going to be drawn first. I suppose you can do that, but I mean, you know. I'm not too worried about that sort of thing. So let's look at anti-magic, since we're anti-magic is an 8th level spell, by the way. We're not dealing with low level stuff here. So magic users can't cast spells in metal armor. Just putting handcuffs on should prevent magic use, right? Well, you're dealing with D&D 5e. it is possible to cast magic in armor. And just because you put handcuffs on them and it being metal doesn't mean that you can't do it. You're talking about a different game. If we go back a bit, yeah, maybe that's going to come into play, but no, not really. I am the New Age sage. I'm the New Age idiot. Okay, next. Anti-magic field. Level 8 spell. So this is on page 213. I'm going to read it out and then I'm going to stop and comment. Oh, I've got an easier spell question. Twin spell. Okay, twin spell would be the easiest spell to cover. Here we go. So, 8th level, anti-magic field. Casting time, 1 action. You cast it, it's a range of self, 10-foot radius sphere. Okay, so it's going to be on you and within. So that's a spell that you would target on the center of you. Okay, this is the one time where it actually makes sense to target the center of you, not something else. Okay. Verbal components, somatic material component, you need a pinch of powdered iron or iron filings. Its concentration up to an hour, okay? A 10-foot radius, invisible sphere of anti-magic surrounds you. This area is divorced from the magical energy that suffuses the multiverse. Okay, all right. Within the sphere, spells can't be cast, okay? Summoned creatures disappear, and even magic items become mundane. Until the spell ends, the sphere moves with you, centered on you. It states in the spell that it's centered on you, not on the edge of your miniature. It's not like you exclude the square that you're standing in or the space you're standing in, and then 10 feet out from you. You're not getting it. You're not pushing this. If you're thinking you're going to be able to do that, you're not able to push this thing out from being 20 foot radius to 25 foot radius. 20 foot, not 20 foot diameter. I mean, you're not pushing it out. You're not pushing it out from a 10 foot radius to a 2.5 radius, a 12.5. God, I'm going to get mixed up. 12.5 radius. You're not pushing it out. You're not making it bigger. It's on yourself, okay? It's still a big area. It's still going to affect a lot. Next. Spells and other except okay, so spells and other magical effects except those created by an artifact or a deity are suppressed by the sphere and can't protrude into it. So in other words, this means if you're dealing with an artifact, anti-magic field won't be effective against it. If you're dealing with an item or something that's created by a deity, like their spell casting by a deity, anti-magic field is not intended to be able to stop them doing their stuff. Okay. Next, a slot expended to cast a suppressed spell effect is consumed. So a slot expended to cast a suppressed spell is consumed. While an effect is suppressed, it doesn't function. By the time it spends, suppressed counts against it as its duration. That's a very confusing part. This is one of the things why I don't like anti-magic field as a spell. It's just that last little bit. It's really, really like confusing. I can understand why you might get really annoyed with this one. Let's have a look again and see if I can pull it apart again. So, a slot expended to cast a suppressed spell is consumed. Okay, all right, so you're expending a slot while an effect is suppressed. It doesn't function, but the time it spends suppressed counts against its duration. Okay, targeted effects. Spells and other magical effects such as magic missile and charm person that target a creature or an object in the sphere have no effect on that target. That last sentence there is really confusing. If you're confused by that, I have no answer for you. I have no idea what they're trying to communicate. It doesn't make sense, and everything that comes to my mind that might sort of make it clearer just seems like complete nonsense. So I'm gonna leave it at that. As for putting anti-magic on an item, you know, I mean, you can, I suppose. But it would be homebrewy stuff, and homebrewy stuff is fine. But if it's homebrewy stuff, you can make it do whatever the heck you want it to do. So I don't know that it really matters that much. Anyway, next. Theoretical stuff. Here we go. Okay, next. Moving on. You've DM'd over 17. I know there are some of you who have. Next. Okay, so let's deal with Shy X's Metamagic Twinned Spell. Here we go. So, Twinned Spell targets an additional creature. If it targets only a creature that has died is an object, making Twinned Revivify uneligible. But it is still a creature. Okay, I see what you're trying to do here. You're trying to twin Revivify so you can target more than one creature to bring them back to life. Correct? That's what you're trying to do. Okay? So you're trying to twin the spell so you can use Revivify and then bring back more than one target at the same time. Which is like pretty strong. I get what you're trying to do here now. That makes a little bit more sense now as to what you're trying to ask. So let's look at Revivify first. Okay, and then we'll look at the twin spell. And I get the distinct feeling that they would interact quite successfully. I'm not sure how easy it would be to achieve, given the situations that would require it. But here we go. So, Revivify, 3rd level Necromancy. Action, touch, instantly. So you touch a creature that has died within the last minute. So it's only a single target spell. It's a single target spell. Okay? You would have to have the 2 creatures right next to you to be able to do it, or you need to cast a spell and then move and then cast the second spell, Revivify. Okay, let's go to twin spell now. Did I get this right? Hopefully I did. Revivify, twin spell. Let's go to twin spell. Sorcerer, where are you? No, it's a warlock. Sorcerer, twin spell. Here we go. Metamagic, twin spell. How does twin spell work? When you cast a spell that targets only one creature and doesn't have a range of self, I see where you're going with this now. You can spend a number of sorcery points equal to the spell's level to target a second creature in range with the same spell. Okay, to be eligible, a spell must be incapable of targeting more than one creature in the spell's current level. Okay, fair enough. For example, Magic Missile, Scorching Ray. So it only targets one thing. So your issue is, if a dead creature is dead, is it now an object or is it a creature? And my answer to you, Shy X, is very simple. Why the hell are you worrying about this? If you are a game master and somebody is trying to use sorcery and twin spell to use Revivify twice to bring people back to life because 2 people have died just recently, why are you concerning yourself so much with this? That you would not just allow it? Because they have to have enough diamonds to do it. Like each time they do Revivify, they're going to be using it if they're doing it twice. Okay? You're literally going to have to use not just 300 gold pieces worth of diamonds, but 600 gold pieces of diamonds. That's a lot. Okay? That's rather a lot. And the other thing to consider too is Revivify is it's not a low-level spell. It's still a 3rd level spell. That's 2 3rd-level slots that they're going to lose when they do this on their turn. Twinning Revivify. And to be concerned about the fact that do we count a corpse, a dead creature that was alive, that was a creature that is now dead, do we consider it still a creature because it's dead, or do we consider it an object? This is where game masters make rulings. Do you know what I mean? What seems reasonable given the situation? I would say, yes, it makes sense. It was a creature at some point. It is now dead. But circumstantially, considering how Revivify works and how the twin spell works, I would just allow it. I would still allow it. It was a creature at one point. It has only just recently died and become essentially an object. I think this is one of the problems with D&D, is they have a lot of spells that say you can target a creature, but it doesn't say you can target an object. There are other spells that say you can target an object, but you can't target a creature. As rules is written, I honestly, when it comes to things like that, frankly, I think you're better as a game master to concentrate on what is the concept, the general concept behind the spell that you need to adjudicate to make it work. And every time you see a spell say it only targets a creature and doesn't target an object, or it targets an object but doesn't target a creature, I would ignore that. I would just ignore that shit. And I'd just say, just let it work on an object or a creature. Okay, I know there are certain things like Magic Missile. Magic Missile is guided towards living creatures. Twin Spell burns up so many spell slots, as Fred Huber's just pointed out. Let them knock themselves out with it. Don't worry about that stuff. It really isn't worth it. Anyway, let's see what else we've got here. I don't know if that's the answer you were expecting, Shy X. I'm not trying to give you a hard time, but I would never consider that something you want to really worry too much about. There are worse things that can happen to a character than character death. And if you don't believe me, you haven't been in one of my games. And you probably won't either, but that's beside the point. I probably did answer this earlier. I'm pretty sure I did. Yeah, Fred Huber, I probably have. But I'll do it again, it's fine. 5e, the mage that took 2 levels of fighter, can wear plate and cast spells. Exactly. Yep. Not happening in my game. So I'm just answering questions about the rule system. That's all I'm doing. Calrel. Anti-magic metal has been around since first E, I believe. Homebrew, yes, from Dungeon Magazine, I believe, if memory serves. Yeah, okay, cool. Moving on. Next, 5e has so many classes and subclasses. The only reason to multi-class is to abuse features. I would agree, but I know people like subclasses. My rationale and understanding about D&D 5e and classes and subclasses is if you make a class that's really garbage, then you will need subclasses. If you made a class that was actually good, you wouldn't need subclasses. The only reason we have subclasses in D&D 5e is to milk as much money out of players who are stupid enough to go and buy these features because they didn't put it all into the actual basic class in the first place. It is just another excuse to do that, and it's much easier for Wizards of the Coast to create a subclass than a full-blown class because there's a lot less testing and a lot less stuff to create. So it's very easy money for them. It's the money spinner. Subclasses is the microtransaction of D&D 5e, if people hadn't figured that one out. Moving on. But then this is why I stay with OSR, and that's fine. You can stay with OSR. I mean, I changed the rules, so do everybody in my group. So, and we play 5e right now. A value check. Now, the Zealot Barbarians making Twinned, Revivify, Raise Dead, True Resurrection for 2 targets free. Oh, okay. So that's that's an interesting combination that's going on there. I don't know enough about the Zealot Barbarian to be able to solve that. I see where you're going with this now. Look, I would have to sit down with the Zealot Barbarian and pull it apart, and I will not have time. So I apologize if I have not been able to explain that very clearly as to how it might interact with the Zealot Barbarian. But if it was just a sorcerer or some other class, I don't think it's going to be a big problem. Yeah, it was a creature. It's now dead. And yes, yeah, it's semantics. I think a lot of people get caught up in the semantics too. I mean, look, when it comes to magic, you've got to stop thinking of magic like chess. Think of it like D&D. Magic is magic, okay? It's not playing chess. You're not moving the rook or the knight in an L shape all the time because it's magic. You're going to have a lot more fun playing at high level with magic if you actually know how to deal with kind of shifting and bending things a little bit. Next. Twinned only burns one slot. Does it? Does it only burn one slot? You cast a spell that targets only one creature. Spends a number of sorcery pretty. Yes. Does it? I don't see anything to indicate that it only burns one slot. Oh, I see. It's the sorcery points. Oh, okay. Hang on, we go. So you can spend a number of sorcery points equal to the spell's level to target a second creature in range with the same spell. One sorcery point is if the spell is a cantrip. Yeah, but you have to use, for a Revivify, which is a 3rd level spell, you have to use 3 sorcery points. That's still a resource. It was just a fringe thought. Okay, all right. So it's still a resource. Now, like, it might not be a spell slot, but you remember sorcerers can turn sorcery points into spell slots. So in many respects, you're still burning up the slots that you might have had available if you were able to have them, to spend them, to turn them into slots. Sorcery points are still like spell slots in many respects. It's just extra things, you know? I think it's essentially the same. Anyway, Matthew. Hello, Matthew. Bending these target rules could be as easy as targeting attached clothing or a creature or a belt or a cloak. Yes, it certainly could be. I would agree. Yeah. And how comfortable you feel about doing that, really, that's up to you. It's not up to me. I've been doing this a little while, and so have a lot of people in this chat. So you get more comfortable, that sort of stuff. If you're not familiar with these spells, you're probably going to be a bit afraid of doing that, and I can understand. Anyway, do you have questions? We had 38% out of 18 votes who had questions. Maybe it was 27. Look, I'm going to be back next week to do one more on D&D 5e. Okay, I'll do one more live stream on D&D 5e, and I'll be covering homebrew rules. I feel like we've gone into the homebrew section today already. So I'll talk about whatever you want to talk about that's home brewing, doing something with the rules. I'll cover some stuff, and I will discuss whatever you want to discuss in it. There is no slideshow for that, okay? I don't do a slideshow for homebrew rules. I will use the maps and miniatures to demonstrate some of the things that I do, because I think that's going to be a good way to deal with it, rather than me just talking. But I am happy to cover other stuff, and if you want to do more discussions around magic and so forth, I totally get it. I totally understand. Anyway, I need to get going. I've got to go to work. There will be no live stream tomorrow. I have a job interview, so I won't be able to do any live streaming, and then I have work straight after, so it's just not possible. So I apologize for that. But next week, same day, same time, same bat channel, we'll do another Dungeons and Dragons 5e homebrew rules. Last one for 5e for a while. Okay. Anyway. Thank you for being here. Thank you for watching and listening. Thank you for taking part in the poll. I appreciate everybody from Patreon who supports me so I can keep doing this. I really do appreciate that you do support me. It makes a big difference. It's much harder to survive on YouTube than it has ever been, and it gets harder and harder every single day. Okay, and you'll notice that things are going to get worse, not better. It's just how it is. So really do thank you. Thank you for those people who provided their feedback and their questions in the chat. So Cal Rel, hello James, you're welcome James. Shy X, Matthew, Fred Huber, Jasper AK, who else? Have I missed anybody? I believe Nacho Man, who's a patron, as well as Fred Huber, was in here as well, for at least for a little bit anyway. And if I missed anybody, I'm so sorry. I wasn't planning to do that. Just doing my. Oh, Frank. Frank had a lot of really tough questions. Ramiro was here. Frank's questions were really quite difficult. Osiris, thank you for being here. Anyway, that is that for today. And so wherever you are in the world, whether it be the morning, the afternoon, or the night, Please look after yourself, your family, and your friends. Be nice to your neighbours, and hey, till next time, keep rolling those 20s.